there, welcome to another episode of Bill Selak Talks. My name is Bill Selak. This is me talking. And what are we talking about today? Curiosity. And where are we going to start? With the moon. Take a moment and imagine with me. Oh my gosh, it sounds like a Radiolab podcast intro, which is great. They're very, very good at it. Can you tell I've been listening to a lot of Radiolab? I have. Take a moment and imagine a cartoon. Something with like the morning and then night, and then morning and the rooster crows, and then night and the moon is up, and then morning and the sun is up. Can you picture this? Almost like a like Hanna-Barbera cartoon from like the 50s maybe when we were kids, or Animaniacs or something. I feel like I have a very vague thing, no idea where it's from, but I can very clearly picture day, sun, clockwise flip, night, moon. And it wasn't until well into my 30s that I looked at the moon during the day and was like, wait a minute, I thought it was sun, day, moon, night. And finally, by the time I got well into my 30s, I was also like, I could actually Google this and learn. And it comes to find out, that was a weird sentence, but that's okay. The moon is not moon night, and the sun is sun and day, but the moon has its own cycle. The cartoons from 40, 50, 80 years ago, whenever, those are not scientifically accurate. It turns out the moon is something on like a 25-hour cycle, and so when it's like a new moon, where like you see almost nothing, that's kind of at noon. And then kind of when it's a full moon, it's out like at midnight, kind of. I don't know quite enough to be able to be conversant in this and say any of this definitively, but like, I know it's not sun in the day, moon in the night. And it took me a long time of like looking at the moon to be like, that seems different than what I think. And I love that idea of just being curious and learning stuff and following curiosities. And I have come to find today that being curious about things and then following that curiosity to learn a thing and do a thing and make a thing is really like, if I could distill what I think schools can be best at, it is that. And here's how I've come to that. Today at our new-ish high school in downtown San Jose, I hosted as an Apple Distinguished School a group of about 30 educators from South Korea, and they had a handful, like maybe 20 questions ahead of time, of like things they were hoping to learn, things they were hoping to see. Now keep in mind, this is early August, our school has not started yet for students, so just a handful of people were there. So like Charlie, our founding college counselor, was there. Josie, our head of student support services, were there. They were both extraordinary. If either of you listening, thank you. You're both awesome. If you're not listening, thank you still, and you're still both awesome. Your awesomeness is not contingent upon you listening to me talk. But so much of what I described to what our school is, who we are, what we value, and how we do things was around curiosity. How, you might be wondering? I'm glad you're wondering, because I'm going to tell you a little bit more. So they were asking questions about like, how do you develop courses? And now as an independent school, there's an interesting tension, because our kids are going to apply to colleges and go to colleges, and colleges have very specific requirements. So we can't just make like underwater basket weaving that my 7th grade algebra teacher would joke about majoring in. We can't make that a class and have kids get credit for it. We can have any class we want, but if they want to get college credit, it needs to like check certain boxes. So it's the both constraint of like making them legit classes, both so parents and students will want to stay, and so that they can actually get into a college and these classes count towards that, but then also the flexibility to teach kind of what we want and how we want it. So we can do things more thematically, we can pick more of a niche thing, looking at maybe like this historical era that we have to cover for it to be a class that like University of California, the UC system will accept. So we're looking at this historical period, but maybe we're just looking at gender roles in that period. We're doing, kind of a deeper dive around that. So there's like this tension of kind of flexibility and rigidity. And so they're like, well, how do you choose what to do? And what I kept coming back to, and so many of the questions of this delegation from South Korea that were visiting us this morning, my answer kept coming back to curiosity. So some of our projects and lessons start with student curiosity. Quick example I shared this morning. I don't think I shared it on this podcast. I think I only shared it on the Hillbrook School podcast. Our applied calculus teacher, it might have been applied physics, she does both, was talking with students around traffic safety. So in downtown San Jose, our school is new-ish, so it has not had like a formal traffic safety review in a way that other schools have, that I think happens in cities. I don't know. I've not worked at a city before. And so people tend to drive through and past our campuses going pretty fast when they can. There's still a lot of, it's downtown, so you can't go that fast, but you'd be surprised. Some people try to really go fast. And I think it was a student that was like, wow, people go really fast. Or maybe it was her saying like, hey, look at the striping on the ground and let's look at kind of safety. And I think what calculus is, this is not how it was described to me, even though I went through Calculus 4 in college. I never actually learned how you would ever use it. But I think calculus is like looking at changes over time. And this can be deceleration. So like cars' braking distance, I think is calculus. Kind of regardless of these details. If I'm completely wrong, let me know. But I think that's what it is. And I think if that's the case, like this is a really cool example of like real life use for calculus. So she was out there with radar guns and students measuring outside of our school speed of people and could figure out based on the speed what the braking distance is and then what sort of signage or kind of road narrowing ways that we could potentially work with the city of San Jose to make our area where our students are walking a bit safer. And even if we don't get to that final spot, looking at what is actually possible. Do you hear that? That is a motorcycle on the freeway right now going just so loud. They're like 3 lanes over and I could hear them. And maybe you could too. If you're wondering, that's what it is. In the meantime, we're going 7 miles an hour on the freeway. Perfect time to podcast and just barely touch the gas. Calculus. Back to it. All right. Thank you for that commercial break. The idea that students could look at like this car going fast outside of our school, do a calculus thing and get some information, pretty cool, right? And so that was an answer to like, what projects do you do? How do you come up with it? It was a curiosity of like, wow, these cars are going fast. I wonder how safe it is. I wonder how long it takes them to brake. One other quick aside with that I love, this is my favorite example of implementing AI into a classroom use. We're pretty close to 87 that goes to San Jose Airport. And we're like, I wonder what the braking distance is coming off that highway when we get off on Julian Street to come to our school. And one student's like, let's just go measure it. We'll just walk right up the off-ramp, right as cars are getting off the freeway, we'll go measure it. And what would any teacher do? Be like, that's pretty cool. We are definitely not going to take the whole class to walk onto the freeway. What can we do? We can reasonably ask something like ChatGPT to come up with some models and some pretty close guesses of what it would be if we can use like Google Maps to find the off-ramp length, the off-ramp width, the number of lanes, other stuff that I don't know because I'm not a traffic engineer nor an applied calculus teacher. But they were able to figure all that stuff out, and get some reasonable data, and being like an expert in the sciences, to know like, yes, this is actually reasonable data. We don't need to get real data. We can use ChatGPT to get that data. And so there's just so many moments in that examples of curiosity. And so first of all, it's, I think it was the student that was like, wow, cars are fast. And most teachers would be like, yep, use the crosswalk, stop jaywalking. This teacher was like, cool, how does that fit in with calculus? Here's how, and they do like a 2-month-long study about it. Amazing. The other thing too is they're like, so how do we actually build a school, right? These are like education leaders across an entire country. Like, how do we build a school that can do amazing projects like this? And again, my answer was, say it with me, curiosity. And this time it's in hiring. And so for me, the story I shared with them and I'm sharing with you is that when I'm on a hiring committee, when I'm asked to meet with somebody applying for a job, really kind of whatever job it is at our school, the thing I am trying to hire and get to know about is how curious they are as an individual. Because a curious teacher is going to hear that comment about speed and go, oh, that's a great question. Let's jump into that. This is actually calculus, braking speeds. I think. I'm not the applied calculus teacher. And then a project about that. And then can still cover the curriculum that needs to be covered while doing this real world application where you're not an educator in your 40s going, I wonder if that is calculus. I don't really know what calculus is, but I did 4 years of it, or 4 classes of it, 4 semesters, I guess, of calculus, which is so much that I should know this, and I don't, because it was always just, let's do the next page in the book. I never had a teacher that was curious enough to be like, yeah, let's figure out what this looks like on campus, near campus. And I love that. And so many of my questions when I'm hiring and, on a committee or, whatever, meeting with a candidate, I'm assuming that by the time they get to me and they're on an in-person interview, they are qualified for the job. There's so many amazing people out there that want to work in schools. I don't need to figure out if they can do the job. I want to figure out, are they curious and will have this like culture of curiosity, culture of inquiry, their capacity for kind of taking risks and trying new things and being like, let's do that. I don't know, man. That's a really interesting thing, and let's see if we can figure it out. And then giving it a go. And it ended up being, this particular example was just a killer lesson. And the takeaway and the thing I kept coming back to when I was answering so many of this group's questions was around curiosity, about asking students, what are you curious about? Our school has the Scott Center for Social Entrepreneurship, where we ask 2 questions: what matters to you and what are you doing about it? And for me, both those questions are rooted in curiosity. And then the thing that school administrators can do, whatever your role is hold space in the school day to allow those curiosities to be pursued. So that might be an elective, that might be kind of a capstone style course, that could be just like so many different ways where you get the teacher that's just like an expert in their course and in their subject area, and they're able to like hold this question, still teach the things, and like keep those students super, super engaged. I continue to be surprised with how many of my answers to, more than half of the questions they asked, I used the word curiosity as a response, and like what we value. And because we're an Apple Distinguished School, of course I wanted to be able to highlight how Hillbrook School leverages Apple hardware and software. We do extraordinary things with those devices, and I can't imagine being in a school that doesn't have access to those. But again, so many of those things are like, I wonder how we could use this. Like, I wonder if there's a solution for this or that. I wonder if I can something. And just being curious and then like figuring out how to do things. So interesting. I also am increasingly, and this is where we get a tiny bit off, but I'm going to bring us right back. and kind of get with kind of the overarching theme that I hit kind of again and again in these latest episodes around AI, that I am podcasting right now, around AI in education. I think that we're at a really exciting place where people can begin to build apps just for themselves. And an app can be pretty broad. It can be just a web-based resource. It can be like a legit app that lives on your phone or on your computer. Like number of ways to kind of have a final product. But the idea of like where is there some friction in my job or at my school, and where can I build a solution that will reduce that friction? I think that stems from kind of a default or a bias towards curiosity, of like looking at things as like what if, instead of, oh man, this is really frustrating. Be like, I wonder how we might make this better or streamline it or simplify it or make it more obvious or more user-friendly or quicker. And I feel like tech directors in particular are at a really interesting place where they tend to understand technology better than most, right? So their ability to understand kind of the back end and what needs to happen or what can happen means that we as tech directors and people kind of in these departments and fields in education are able to make solutions for a broader group of people in education. So like one other example, and I think we're going to wrap stuff up here. At our high school, we have 3 different food vendors, 3 different restaurants that students and employees can get their lunches from. And because it's 3 different places, there are 3 different websites and portals and procedures for how to order and get and pay for your lunch, including going in person and waiting and spending most of your lunch break waiting for your food. So a couple high school students, rising juniors, I believe, maybe rising seniors, feels like rising juniors, we're like, wouldn't it be great if we just had one platform, and then kind of got the blessing of a couple admin at our high school, like, give it a go. Built out a prototype where it was like, here's how we can order lunches. Use Cloud Code for all of this. Brought it to me and was like, yeah, this feels doable. We're talking like 6 months ago. This feels doable. And then we get to a point where like we might actually get to use this. Like noticing that friction of like, yeah, lunch ordering could be better. Could be better for employees, for students, for parents, for restaurants. Let's see if we can solve this, right? So building a custom web portal for that. And then the interesting part for me was like, as soon as I realized this actually has legs and could happen, and these 2 high school students, I think, are going to stick with it until it's done. Let's do it. My immediate thought was like, we need to make sure this actually works, because there's 1,000 ways this could go sideways with an ordering system. Sure, you can make it work, but can you make it work every time? Can you make it so when it doesn't work, everybody knows it doesn't work and you're prompted to make it work? Because the silent fail is like an easy thing to happen in vibe coding, right? If you're not spending months or years and doing this full time and only this, and this is your professional job, there's a lot of things you can miss. And so a lot of what I did with this was like look at this and be like, all right, like what could go wrong? All right, so like wrong credit card information. Do we have a path for that? We put everything on GitHub, and really just like fleshed out, made a whole bunch of tasks of like, we got to fix all these issues if we're going to make this a thing. And we're really close to it. We have a restaurant on board, Hobie's in San Jose. They are building out like a menu. We're going to test it on Tuesday. Depending on when you're listening to this, maybe we've already tested it. I'm not going to get into details with that beyond this, but the idea that 2 high school students can be like, ordering lunches is kind of ridiculous here. I love that we have 3 different restaurants, but there's got to be a better way. And then they make the better way, is amazing. And I love I had a talk with Mike yesterday. It's all blurred together. It doesn't really matter for this story. Our head of upper school, or the high school principal, and brought him up to speed on this, and we're like, yeah, let's do it, man. And he was like, this is amazing. He's like, I wish all of high school was this. Just students being curious, finding a problem, wondering about a thing, and then building a thing, doing something that has like a real world impact. It's like so cool, and like really summarizes and distills what I love about teaching, what I love about working at a school, and what I love about Hillbrook students. Like that's so rad that they built this really robust website. I don't know that they would have built it had they known quite how much work it was going to be to make it as tanky as it is, right? Like it needs to not fail if people are spending real money and expecting real lunches, and we're getting there. And I think it all comes back to curiosity. I think it's what schools are in a place to do the best. I think it's what schools should be hiring for, and what makes the world a better place. Aw, what an ending. Thank you for listening. All the big warm feelies at the end. That was a weird way to end it. I had it, and I lost it. That's okay. I will just end with the usual sign off. Thank you for listening. My name is Bill Selak. This has been me.